There was once a prince who thought he was a rooster.
I love that this is exactly where Osho begins. Welcome back to Awakened Stories. Each episode, we take one parable from Osho's 1001 Tales, stories from Zen, Sufi, Hindu, Greek, and everyday life, and sit with it together, not to interpret, just to let it work on us.
I'm Marcus.
And I'm Priya. Here's today's story, an explainer on the bizarre yet profound mad young prince. Let's look at what this ancient teaching reveals about meeting someone exactly where they are.
So we start with this completely absurd premise. A prince who literally strips off all of his clothes, climbs under a large wooden dining table, sits there completely naked, and just clucks. He outright refuses to emerge. He completely drops his human identity and commits 100% to his new reality as a rooster.
Which brings us to the first part of this explainer, the failure of experts.
The king, watching his son live under a table, is acting out of pure despair. And he does what literally any of us would do. He brings in a parade of the very best experts, doctors, philosophers, top-tier advisors, all to fix his son. But they all fail completely. And this beautifully illustrates their fundamental flaw. The experts treated the prince as a problem to be solved from the outside. They tried to talk him out of his reality, arguing with him, while physically and metaphorically standing above him.
Yeah, and just as the king gives up all hope of ever getting his son back, this old mystic arrives at the palace. And he brings a radically different approach, one that starts with a pretty fascinating paradox.
The mystic essentially declares, to cure a madman, you need a greater madman. And he doesn't just say it, he completely embodies it. The king is absolutely horrified when this respected, elderly mystic suddenly throws off all his robes, starts clucking loudly, and literally crawls right under the table to join the naked prince. I mean, the king thought the mystic looked madder than his son. But the thing is, the experts had only read about madness. The mystic was willing to actually travel the road and know the territory from the inside.
And that marks the turning point, moving us into part 2, entering the madness.
The really crucial point here is what the mystic didn't do. He never argued with the prince. He never bargained for his compliance. And perhaps most radically, he never once said, "You are wrong." He never told the prince he wasn't a rooster. Instead, he refused to humiliate him. He chose to simply meet him inside his madness and build a quiet, steady friendship from the inside.
Right, so over time, they build this sort of domestic friendship under the table as two roosters. And then, the mystic models a new way forward. He casually puts on a shirt, noting to the confused prince that there's no actual rule saying a rooster has to be cold. Then, he asks for human food, pointing out that a rooster can certainly eat well. Slowly, step by step, by expanding what's possible within the prince's reality, they begin emerging from the table.
Both of them, side by side. And slowly, the prince came out from under the table. Man, what's really interesting here is that the mystic offers something the experts couldn't, the dignity of conclusion. He never forces a sudden return to humanity. He never yells, "Aha, you're actually a human." Instead, he gives the prince the dignity to reason it out and concede on his own terms. That is the profound difference between being saved by an expert and being truly met by a friend.
Which brings us to part 3, the cost of real love. I have to admit, I've spent a lot of my life being one of the experts in this story, the well-meaning advisor who stands outside someone else's confusion and tries to talk them out of it. Because, like those royal experts, it gives us comfort. It lets us feel sane and put together. It's the vanity of standing outside. But this ancient story is actually a mirror reflecting our own modern instincts. All of our arguments are really just ways of saying you aren't allowed to be where you are right now. True love requires the cost of sitting down. It requires giving up that vanity, looking foolish, and stepping into their darkness.
Exactly, because meeting someone where they are is not a strategy. It is a refusal to be above them. That is the absolute core of this explainer. You simply cannot reach someone by standing over them. You must be willing to step into their territory, drop your own need to be the sane expert, and meet them entirely on their level.
So let's bring this home with part 4, who is under your table?
Take a second and really ask yourself, is there someone in your life right now sitting under a table? Think about a friend, a sibling, or a partner who is struggling, isolated, or trapped in a difficult reality. Have you been acting like an expert? Well-meaning, of course, but ultimately just trying to call them out from a safe, comfortable distance. Have you considered sitting down next to them? Maybe the real work isn't figuring out how to pull people out of the dark. Maybe the real work is simply being willing to sit down next to them in it. Let that sink in. Thank you for sitting with this explainer with us today. We'll see you next time.